Hey, what's going on, guys? Welcome back to the Mike Force Podcast. Happy week to you. I hope you're having a good week. Hope you had a good weekend. Appreciate all the support on Preaching to the Choir, on taking the high ground. Taking the high ground, by the way, doesn't mean tucking your sack between your legs and being weak. It means not being so emotional, so reactive, and focusing your attention on avocation, results, and staying in the fight. If you're interested, it's on every single thing I do, including this podcast. I do it every Sunday. Again, I appreciate your support because I demonetize across the board on those episodes. And my only hope is that more people are watching and listening. It helps me talk about things that I'm going through and making a connection with what I'm going through to God and Scripture. And even if you're not religious, I hope it helps you. So wethepeople.org asked me to come out and speak on this very specific topic, dealing with the sexual abuse of children. There were survivors, there were advocates, there was me talking about the importance and significance of not just standing with a sign, not just advocating, but the significance of action. That's so important. So I've changed my mind because I used to want to stay away from politics and religion. And I realized that's just not me. In fact, it's pretty weak. If I believe in my Lord and Savior Jesus Christ, I don't have to say it every talking point, but I could talk about my feelings and talk about how I feel. If I want to discuss something that's a hot topic issue in our own backyard in Utah, I should be able to talk about that and not be in fear of, I think originally that's why I didn't do it, retaliation. I was asked to speak and I started talking about the disconnect and how you should cut the umbilical cord from the U.S. government because the government is not designed for us to be dependent on. We need to be self-reliant. And so I came out of the woodwork in this experience knowing that now I need to advocate because the only way to get things done in your backyard is to do it yourself. Let me ask you a question, which is an assessment of how much you know about what's going on in your own backyard. If your kids go to school, do you know the Board of Education? Do you know any of their names, their backgrounds? Do you know anybody in the city council in your city or town? You know your local sheriff, your mayor, the senators or legislators in your own backyard? If you don't, you should. And that's the start point. That's where I was, I think, frankly, confused. I'm like, I want to stay out of politics. Well, I also said you need to be worried about what's going on in your own backyard because that's more significant than worried about politics in Washington, D.C. Washington, D.C. doesn't care about you, as you shouldn't have an expectation that they care about you. Do you know the principal of your school? Hell, do you know the cross guard that walks your child across the street? Why would we not know those people? Do you know your teachers that are teaching your children? There's a huge disconnect, and I realized it when I was standing in the audience and crowd, and Jason Preston separated the victims and advocates from people who had just showed up. 60, 70% of the people who were there were victims and advocates, people who are going through this turmoil that is sexual abuse of children. There was a lady at the event named Mary Beth who described in detail the abuse she went through starting at the age of 5 from one of the ward presidents of her church. A ward is like a section of a demographic and breakdown of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints. And she was abused her entire life up until she gained the courage as an adult to break contact. When we look at these issues that we face, we have to ask ourselves, just because we're not involved in them intimately, they are policies, law, statutes that are affecting the people we love, our neighbors, our community. Why we were specifically there was under a bill called SB 213, and the Salt Lake Tribune published an article. Again, this is from the Salt Lake Tribune. Utah's Senate president prompted law change that helped a teen charged with child rape who happened to be a relative. So this Senator, President J. Stewart Adams, a Republican, made the initial suggestion that led to a recent change in Utah's child rape penalty, and that Adams had an 18-year-old relative charged with child rape of a 13-year-old. So I, like you, have been to high school. I can't imagine any circumstances that would justify an 18-year-old sleeping with a child. Now, the age of consent in high school is actually 14 because they do this Romeo and Juliet clause that it's a 4-year gap. And I imagine it has to do with if you're a freshman, well, they're seniors. But a 13-year-old could be a freshman, but also could be in junior high. Now, when you look at it, you go, okay, so an 18-year-old slept with a 13-year-old, meaning an adult. Just because they're in high school doesn't mean they're not an adult. If a 16-year-old commits a murder in Chicago, he's being charged as an adult. A 16-year-old can go get a driver's license and drive a car responsibly or irresponsibly. When I was 17 years old, I was in the U.S. Army. I graduated high school at the age of 16. I graduated early by going to, not because I'm smart, because I'm not, but because I'm a hard worker and I hated high school. So the law that changed in 2024 via this SB 213, via the recommendation from Stewart Adams, a Senate president in Utah, as written here, a tweet says, Stewart Adams, the Republican president of Utah Senate, just intervened to loosen the age of consent laws after an adult was charged with having sex with a 13-year-old child. The adult is a relative of Adams. Now, what this new law means is if you're 18 and you sleep with somebody who's under the age of 14, they could be 10, you will be penalized, but only as a juvenile, lessening the penalty. If you're 14, you're fine because that 4-year gap up to 18 in high school. But if you're an 18-year-old and you sleep with anybody under the age of 14, it's completely a juvenile issue, meaning it's swept under the rug. It's a non-issue, essentially, because the penalties are nil. It's nothing. We could do better. That's disgusting. So hypothetically, if a 10-year-old is sleeping with an 18-year-old, which would be statutory rape, they would only be charged as a juvenile. And then no matter what the severity of the circumstance, they would be charged in juvenile court where they would likely see no jail time, no penalties, and most significantly not be added to the database for pedophiles. There are 800,000 people as of last year in the pedophile sex registry. 8,000 over the year before. Shocking number. And now we've loosened the penalties and given the opportunity, in this case, for an 18-year-old relative who was supposed to be facing 25 years of charges for sleeping with a 13-year-old. Now, that man, that person, he's a man, a grown man, he's 18. He didn't even do any jail time besides the period of time he spent in jail when he was initially arrested. We could do better. We're not doing enough for our children. It's disgusting. So That's the reason we need to advocate for these type of things. That's the reason we need to come out of the woodwork and fight for our own communities, because this is not happening in Washington, D.C. This is happening in your own backyard. I have started a Family Unity Act. The Family Unity Act protects families over institutions and systems designed to break them down. The foster care system right now has 400,000 at any given time, around 400,000 children in its system. 80% of that 400,000, 80%, 8 out of 10 kids were put in foster care based on findings from Child Protective Services, or, depending on where you live, Department of Child and Family Services in your own state. They can take your kid based on assumptions, allegations, no evidence. The bar of evidence is very low. Do you want a system that's able to reach into your home and strip your children from your house based on an allegation? No. I lost my 5-year-old son for 5 days. Initially, they said, and this will be part of the suit because I'm suing the hell out of the state of Utah, DCFS, and the entire government. I'm working that right now on the back end. Not even presently with my lawyers, because they have to deal with these people on a daily basis. I have to get an outsider, and it's going to be federal. I'm going to bring down the sledgehammer on these institutions, but do it the right way, the legal way, and fight for families. This legislation that I'm proposing is national because it is a systemic issue. When I lost my son for 5 days, the excuse given originally, which I have all the documentation and receipts, which will come out and be part of the suit, it was an administrative error because we didn't sign documents. We signed the documents, and they were in the inboxes. Then they made another claim, which I won't get into. 5 days stripped off his mother's breast as he was breastfeeding, screaming. The trauma that's created in my family and circumstance, I can't even begin to describe that. My kids were taken away for 8 months. It's been 8 months now. False allegations. I have receipts. Again, going through the litigation process. I could take the high ground and tell you a little bit about what's going on, but also demand change. And there's plenty of it. It's coming. I have friends that are members of Congress, that are sitting senators. I've communicated with Trump Jr. I will do every single thing I can to defend my family and yours. And that's what we need. We need to get off the bench and fight, but do it the right way. And mostly it's not your fault because you don't know. I'm figuring this out. My goal is to help you help yourself, your own situation, your own family, and your own community. Because it's not a grand conspiracy. It's just institutions used to doing what they do outside of the Constitution, and the number of constitutional violations, due process violations, and unethical behavior I've identified will blow your mind. And it will all come out. Trust me, it will all come out. You know what they will likely do to retaliate? Put me under a gag order. You think that will stop me? It won't, because I'm telling the truth. Trust me, if they put me under a gag order, I'll be on Rogan's podcast, I'll be on Tucker's podcast, and I will be doing my best to tell everybody what's going on. In our nation, by the way, this is not just an isolated incident. It's a systemic cancer that is spread throughout our country. Now, most of you listening to this will be like, well, yeah, I know, man. It's praying for you. It sucks to be you. And you don't want to get involved because you're not in the circumstance. I never thought I would be as a 45-year-old father of 4, a 20-year veteran. I never thought I would be in this circumstance, but here I am. You never know, man. I hope to share those lessons learned with you one day. But again, the whole point is there is an advocacy component that you need to be involved in local issues, not politics, local issues with your own community. Start going to your board meets. Start showing up and figuring out who these people are running everything behind the scenes, because they might be the wrong person. I don't think there's villains. I think there's incompetence. I think we're just used to operating in an echo chamber, but it needs to be fixed. The Family Unity Act. I'll be on Preston's podcast on Wednesday talking all about it. And I have a working group of men that I'm working with right now. I just added a couple women that I met at this event on We the People. And they're going to help me articulate and propose the legislation that needs to be changed nationally, not just in the state of Utah, but I want it to be a federal change so I can hold them accountable, because nobody has accountability. It's like the police doing an investigation and investigating themselves. Yeah, we didn't find anything. Of course you didn't find anything. And that's corrupt. That's broken. We need accountability in these broken institutions. Also, I just launched the Chris Piota podcast, 25-year FBI agent. We talk about domestic threats in the cartel. I'll be on Survival Dispatch. Every Wednesday, I'm doing that show in the evenings. If I'm not on the first hour, I'm on the second hour. I typically post that on my Instagram at Mike Glover Actual to let you guys know the link so you could live watch it, because it's typically filmed live and then archived. There is going to be a domestic terrorist attack, unfortunately. That's not from my expertise, because my expertise is not intel. That's from the intel experts' expertise, and I'm helping with understanding operationally how it's going to happen and things that you could do to prepare. As always, I'm always on my Patreon as well. Big shout out to Wolf21. Hey, I started Wolf21 because I love Wolf21's story. He is one of the wolves that was reintroduced into Yellowstone. And I also have major issues sleeping, which is why I made a sleep supplement that is non-THC, that is CBD and CBN. And the stand-down component of this has no THC derivatives, including hemp, because there are trace amounts of that in there. I made this for first responders, for people like you, that has chamomile, passion flower, and reishi mushroom with magnesium and melatonin. The microdose version of that. It's one of my favorite sleep supplements. I'll put a discount code down below, as well as the website. I appreciate you guys from Wolf21, my team at Wolf21. All right, guys, I'm getting into a lot of content this week on my Patreon and everything else. I appreciate you guys. Hope you have a good week. Till next time. Peace out.